a couple of guests joining me for a lovely discussion. At the moment, I have a beautiful lady with me, which I would like to introduce herself. But today we are going to have a discussion about self-esteem. So self-esteem, the discussion is about training, building a child's self-esteem. So I will let my panel introduce themselves. So Reverend Israel is here. So please introduce yourselves and then we'll start.
Okay, good day all, and good day to my viewers. God bless you. I'm most honored to be live on this program to make my contribution known as regards training a child and raising a child's self-esteem. My name is Reverend M.I. Israel. I'm a pastor and a research scientist. I'm also a husband and a father of 3 kids. So I'm also an author, and there's so many other things. So thank you for having me.
Thank you.
I hope you had
Mercy.
Yeah. Hope you
Thank
heard me
you.
well.
Hello.
Yeah.
My name is Messi Beric, my online name, actual name Messi Kwa, and I'm happy to rejoin you guys on this podium. Hello, fellow viewers all around the world. I'm very interested always when it's anything to do with kids and parenting. I am not a professional per se, but I'm a mother of 6, 5 girls and a boy. And so I am happy to join and contribute in my own way from personal experiences as well as what I've learned from other people over the years. So thank you and welcome again.
Oh, well, thank you. So the topic of discussion is training a child's self-esteem, building your kid's self-esteem and trimming emotional overloads. So everyone seems to know by now how positive self-esteem is critical to good mental health, happiness, and enjoyment of life. You know, psychologists have been talking about it for years. Even before the field of psychologists existed, the great thinkers of the world referred to the need to love yourself. Centuries ago, Buddha said, you yourself, as much as anybody in the entire universe, deserve love and affection. So self-esteem is very important. Since self-esteem is so important, learning what it really is and how to improve it can help one to have a better life. So self-esteem, as we know, encompasses of many different facets, you know. And I'm trying to read from a reference and then we follow with the questions. So self-esteem has different facets of how you view who you are as a person. A complete self-esteem explanation needs to have so many levels. It affects your confidence, how much you blame others, how you feel, and all those things. So with my panel, I have listed a couple of questions for you. Can you please tell us what self-esteem is?
All right. I'll go ahead. For me, I coined it as self-esteem being a fundamental human need that makes us able to cope with life's difficulties. So self-esteem is how good, how confident you feel about yourself. And this goes on to reflect on how you act and how you how you also portray yourself when, especially when faced with difficulties.
Reverend,
Okay, yes, thank you very much. Um, I would describe self-esteem as a measure of one's self-worth, level of acceptance, the way one accepts himself, also the way one respects himself and believe in his or her own abilities. So self-esteem has to do with your ability to be comfortable in your own skin, knowing that you are unique. You don't have to rely on external validation. You don't have to rely on people to, make you feel better. Although people can contribute to making us feel better, but fundamentally, you should believe in yourself. And when you reach out to people, we call that relationship. So self-esteem has to do with your outlook, the way you value life, the way you see life, the way you appreciate your community, the way you carry yourself, your confidence level you exude. So self-esteem is a key ingredient to determining the emotional health and well-being and mental well-being of an individual. So when we talk about self-esteem, I think we have a low self-esteem and high self-esteem. For people who have low self-esteem, it affects their their outlook in life, the way they see life. They feel a sense of hopelessness, sense of rejection, sense of worthlessness. People who have low self-esteem feel they are not worthy to receive love or to receive, I mean, to be respected. So most times they recoil, they are withdrawn from people and filled with resentment, bitterness, and a lot of behavior. So I think self-esteem, just like Mercy has said, has a lot to do with our character and behavior, and it affects our relationships. So there are a lot of things that is associated with self-esteem. Most times, the fundamental place where self-esteem is built or supposed to be built is in the family. Like people who come from polygamous family or dysfunctional family, or people who come from abusive family that are abusive families, where the child is not reassured, the child is not validated, the child begins to suffer from an identity crisis. So, and these affect the child's overall outlook in life. Thank you very much.
that's very extensive explanation that you've given there. Thank you very much, Reverend. My next question to you is, why is it important for one to have good self-esteem? Because you just explained that there is high and low self-esteem. So can you please explain what you know by just a few words about low self-esteem, and why it's important to focus on a high self-esteem? Why is it important for one to have high self-esteem?
Okay, it is very important to have a high self-esteem because it's a substrate through which other virtues are built on. For example, if you don't have a good self-esteem, you are not able to build courage. You're able to have resilience. You're able to have determination, even build faith. The holy scriptures, talked about a man that doubts will never receive anything from God. So once your heart is wavering, so if you don't have belief in yourself, you don't have confidence in yourself, you will not be able to attract anything good. You'll not be able to set goals and achieve them. You'll not be able to, pass through detours, ride through the waves of the storm and succeed. So once one comes in contact with difficulty or challenges, the person gives up. So it's better to have high sense of self-esteem as a way, as a panacea, or as a springboard to success, to independence in life. A child that does not have good self-esteem will not be independent. He'll be suffering from what I call a dependency, codependency syndrome. He will need other people to, hold him to as a latch for him to excel in life. And also, it's very important to have a high self-esteem because it determines the behavior, the character, and the nature of a child, and also relationship the child builds with himself and with others. So a child that is morally that is demoralized, that has levels of esteem, becomes a public nuisance, becomes, involved in anti-social, anti-vice activities. So when you have a high self-esteem, you discover that that child will be able to, to survive in this life, and also to make impact, yeah, within his even field of endeavor. Thank you very much.
Okay, Mercy, can you explain more about what low self-esteem is? Can you give us some examples, and then high self-esteem and why it is important for us
Yeah.
to have
Well,
high self-esteem?
okay, just to add to what Reverend Israel just said, I think it's very important to have high self-esteem because it makes you to become like a functional human being that's mentally and physically. So the way your self-esteem, it will your if you have a high self-esteem, you will be able to succeed in the world, be it in any setting, whether it's how you operate with people or at your work site. And it's something to do with responsibility. You have to actually accept who you are, and then you have to also take responsibility, meaning that you don't blame others, but you're able to solve problems, and also you have to be assertive. So you have to believe in you have to really have confidence in what you believe in, so that if anybody is saying something that is not correct, you are able to stand your ground and proudly say, this is what it is, and this is how um, to go about it. And also, it has a lot to do with personal integrity, because especially nowadays, where immorality is a normal thing, and sometimes it's okay to lie, or it's the better thing to do. You really have to have personal integrity. So be true to yourself, and you know all of this will just make you to become a successful person in whatever aspect. And having a low esteem, it's not a good thing at all, because like today, a lot of kids, they suffer from depression because they feel like they're not valued. So you have to do your best to raise your child in a way that they grow up with this high self-esteem, so that they are confident beings and they actually know their place in the world. You have to accept their thoughts and give them value, so that even when they have like a stumbling block, they know that this is okay and they can get above it, and you know and get to a better place. Yeah, so like for low esteem especially, I want to just focus on that. A lot of our kids are depressed just because of just they don't feel valued, they don't feel heard. So we really have to raise our kids such that they know they have a place in this world and they can figure things out for themselves. So it's very important. I feel it's really a fundamental part of their growing up and being successful, for us to really input into them these characteristics that will help them to feel highly of themselves.
Yeah, we are talking about positivity, loving yourself. Don't you think that some people would think that you're too selfish to be thinking too well of yourself? In some cultures, if you think well of yourself, some people hate. Why are you talking about yourself so much? Why you think you are this, you are that? And they put people down for having such confidence. What do you say about that?
Okay. Yeah, I should respond, right?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. I think that as we grow up, as we grow into adulthood, as we age, we need to unlearn and relearn certain things that we have learned. Even there's some religious cliche and religious, will I say, teachings which we need to really reevaluate. Jesus Christ said from the Holy Scripture that you should love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy might, and with all thy strength. And you should love your neighbor as thyself. So if I rephrase that, It means thou shalt love your neighbor in at the degree which you love yourself. That means you must first of all love yourself before you can love another person. If you don't accept yourself, you can't accept another person. So if you also look at somewhere in the scripture, that's in Romans 12 verse, you said, do not think of yourself more highly than you ought to. Romans 12:3, sorry, Romans 12, chapter 12 verse 3. Do not talk of yourself more highly than you ought to, but think soberly according to the measure of grace dealt with us. So you should not think yourself high. Don't be arrogant, and don't operate in low self-esteem. You should think of yourself in the measure God thinks about you. So loving yourself is not a crime. Most times we are taught to love people and abandon ourselves. That is not correct. You should love yourself sufficiently that when you start loving people, to be an overflow, an overflow of of the love you have for yourself. So I don't believe that you should inconvenience yourself to the point that you will regret it for you to prove that you love another person. No. So you should learn to accept yourself. I will just tell a little story about myself. I believe God brought this topic out. Allowed us to treat on this topic for a particular reason. Yeah, I think I'm an example of one that had high level, high powered, or high level low self esteem in this life. Because I grew up from a polygamous family where everything was just dysfunctional. I live with uncles and aunts. They abuse me physically and verbally, say a lot of things. You never do well, this, that. Of course, they won't treat their children that way. They will treat you that way because you are not really their biological kid. So oftentimes they will send me to go and buy something. I don't know how to describe the kilometer, but then they'll send me to a place to go and buy something that I have to take like 1 hour or 2 hours to get to that place. They will not give you transport money. So a lot of things, and when you come back late, they'll begin to beat you up. So it really affected me as a person. I struggled with low self-esteem for a long time, that I gave into as anxiety and depression and what have you. So we are meant to love ourselves, but I thank God that today the story has changed. What helped me anyway, they will soon come to that. What helped me was I came to understand that God loves me regardless of what people. Because oftentimes you find a child may find himself in an environment that will make him to question his sanity, question his identity, especially when your parents are not there, or when your parents are given to drugs or alcohol, or when your parents are a child that's from a broken home. So you're exposed to people who don't know your value, who only sees you as a tool to achieve their own purpose, probably as a house help or house maid. So that child begins to suffer from low self-esteem. So I come to understand that God loves me and He cares about me, regardless of whatever I have or don't have. So it helped me, and also books helped me. I read a lot of books: John Masson, John Maxwell, Jim Covert, all these books, Ben Carson. I began to see life in a broader scale, in a larger scale, beyond my circumstance. So it is good to love yourself and accept yourself. We are different, we are wired differently. You cannot be like this A, B cannot be like C, but rather we are meant to complement each other. There are unique gifts that God has given to you that you can, use to bless the lives of other people. So what we have today in our society is that people, because of low self-esteem, they use material things to augment, to make up for their deficiency. Don't buy cars. It's good to buy car. They use their car, they use their houses, they use their degrees as a way to beef up their low self-esteem. That's why they can't talk to you. They can't finish a statement without talking about their car, their house, their land, their this, their that, their visa, their land, their investment. They have low self-esteem regardless of. So these are baggages carry over from childhood. They're not able to deal with it. So it's very dangerous to have a low self-esteem. So oftentimes we'll say, why did God make us in Africa? We should be in America, we should be in Germany. But learn to trust God that He has a reason why He made you the way you are, why you are blind.
Yeah.
You're able to take care of yourself sufficiently before you are able to extend to other people. So that is my own case,
Yeah.
submission rather. Thank you.
So it's not selfish to love yourself. It's
Is
a
right is right
stepping stone.
is righteousness to love yourself.
Okay, that's good. It's good that you it's coming from that side. Normally, it seems as selfish most of the time. People, when you talk about loving yourself, we've always been the narrative has always been somebody else before yourself. But if you don't know how to love yourself, how then do you love someone else? So, as we are talking about kids in this aspect, Mercy, did you want to ask something? Did you want to add something to that?
Well, I just wanted to say amen to what Reverend said. I know he's coming from a different background, saying polygamous, but we all go through these moments where we have high esteem and low esteem, you know. Like for me as a mom, sometimes it can even be like after you're having a child and then you feel like overwhelmed, you know, it kind of expresses itself as like postpartum, but you don't even understand it. But like the main thing I've learned from it is that you have the right to exist. So you have to be self-assertive. So it is very important to love yourself. If you don't love yourself, you don't have anything to give. You know, if you can't love yourself, how can you teach your child to love themselves? So we have to, really make sure we make our kids really feel loved, really accept what they are going through, their feelings, give value, to them, make sure they know that they are heard. And then of course we have to also be role models, for them, because if you can't like practice what you're telling them, then it makes no sense. And on the other hand, I just wanted to add that there's always a second chance for kids. If when growing up your parents didn't teach you, you also have another chance at school. You have teachers are very good role models, especially when they come from a fact of not just praising success and punishing failure, but really teaching you, believing in you. So it's very important to love yourself, no matter what. You have to take that and then really show the kids that it's okay, and life is full of ups and downs. It's not always like a straight, but you can actually get out of your obstacle. There's ways to overcome. And also for me, I believe also like just the love of God makes me, a better person, and makes me to be kind to myself, and not to hold me down. So life is not always going to be perfect, but you have to learn the skills and teach them the skills how to rise above, when they're doubting themselves. And so therefore everybody has a right to live, to and to love themselves. Yeah.
Good. Thank you very much, Mercy. So now, since this topic is about kids, at which age should one start to build their child's self-esteem? When do you start? Is it when they are talking, walking, or when is it important as a parent to start building your child's self-esteem? Do you wait till they are adults for them to navigate themselves, or are there ways that you can teach your child to have self-esteem? Can I start with Mercy,
Okay.
please?
Okay. Well, for me, I don't really think there's a timeline, but like as soon as they're understanding, I feel like the earlier the better. It's good to start teaching them when they're really still small and still building up. For example, it's always good to teach your kids, like, you set boundaries. It's very important to set boundaries from a young age, so that they feel secure and know that yes, this is what is considered correct, this is what is considered wrong. You have to always have a continuous a conversation with them. Like even when you go to the store and then they're like, oh, I want this, I want that, you should be able sometimes to actually have them make a choice, but then you also show them what it means, like financial responsibility. And so just give them a chance of already to start knowing that, yeah, what they do and how they act, it has results and it has consequences. So yeah, starting early is very important. And then also as you grow up too, you have teenagers, you have girls. I just feel like it's very important to have an open conversation. So our world can be a little bit different. Me growing up, and now the kids are in a little bit a different fast-paced world. So it's also good to learn from them and also hear what they're thinking. And like the reverend said, some things we have to unlearn or some things we have to modify. Yeah, but the goal is, I believe, to start as early as possible. It definitely helps.
Well, Reverend, can you please explain? Give us your
Okay.
pointers as to How, when to start training a child?
Okay, I would say that the process of building self-esteem is a journey and not a destination. It's a journey and not a destination. But the start time should be from infancy. You know, studies have it that when kids are taught, um, just like she has said, boundaries, what to do and what not to do. For example, if a child, an infant, throws up maybe after giving the child breast milk, breastfeeding the child or giving the child food, and it throws up, you can just tap the child at the mouth, say, "Don't do that, don't do that." Okay, good girl, good boy, don't do that. And each time the child, finishes his or her food, you say, "Well, that's good, that's great, you've done well, that's great." You hold the child and maybe wiggle his hand or her hand. You are subconsciously building the child self-esteem. Like from what I said earlier, that it is a journey and not a destination. Because the word self-esteem, even good self-esteem, is transitional. It's not fixed. A child could be built, you know, on a very good self-esteem, but over time, as they go into adolescence, the action of hormones, what do you call association, peer pressure, maybe the child gravitates, graduate from school, gets a job, relationship issue, the way people views him or her, then, going through a setback or a failure or a crisis could also affect that child's, what do you call it, self-esteem. So like I said, it's not static. For example, when a child grows from infancy to adulthood, if a man loses his job, he has lost his self-esteem. Somehow, he might pretend about it, but he might be working hard in order to ensure that he builds it up. If a man
Yeah.
had got gets, I mean, okay, a broken relationship, it affects him. Issues like infertility, impotence, and what have you, a lot of things, disrespect could also affect, even sibling rivalry could also affect one's self-esteem. But that does not mean it is eroded. It's still there as a foundation, but it's just that he needed to really work around it to ensure that he doesn't lose his self-esteem. So to answer your question in specificity, is from childhood, from infancy, to build the self-esteem of a child by appraising the child, just like what the message said, being assertive, encouraging the child, and also creating an environment, an enabling environment, and then nurturing the child, and being a role model. So from infancy is the best time to build self-esteem, because a broken child would eventually turn out to a broken adult, and it's very, very difficult to reverse the process. So parents and caregivers have a lot of role to play, even teachers. Sometimes in school, you put your children in school, you discover that the teachers begin to abuse them verbally. "You stupid boy, you stupid girl, you are good for nothing, you can't be good, you're not good in mathematics, you cannot do this well." And most times the child will not come home to tell you. He has absorbed that into his system or into her system. So it is very good for educators to use positive words. When you're correcting a child, correct the child based on the action, based on the behavior that is being exhibited, not the person. Don't attack the person, attack the behavior. So this thing you did is wrong. I don't expect that from you. Than gaslighting or abusing the child physically. I mean, sorry, verbally. So because when you attack a child um, uh, on a personal level, the child begin to question his sanity on his identity. But when you correct a child based on his action or based on his mistake, the child learns that this is not the right way to do this, and this is the right way to do this. So it's very, very important. But most times, you see parents abuse their child. They think that is a way of motivating them. You're not doing well. You are this, you are that. At the end of the day, both the correction and both the child, those things are not really well taken. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much, Reverend. My next question is, how do you build your child's self-esteem? And with this question, I think that if you do not value your child, then you cannot build their self-esteem. Value is the key word, I think, in this regard, that if you value something, there are ways that you deal with it. They are how you handle it, how you protect it, the energy around that thing. You are very intentional about anything that you value. So I think how you value your child is will help you to find ways um, to build the child's self-esteem. But having said that, in your background and where you are from can also influence that. So I would like you both who have a lot of knowledge. Nancy, for instance, have different ages of children that can. Mercy has a range of children that have they continue to change as they grow. So each child they come up with different characteristics, different attitude. They are individuals. So how do you build the self-esteem? Because one style of understanding one might be different from the other, right? So you
Yes.
can't use the same thing for one child. You will have to devise other ways, and it's work. So can you help parents note down how to build a child's self-esteem? It might not be one glove fits all, or is it? I throw that question to you.
Yeah, definitely. It's not one glass fit all. But yeah, I try to impress upon them to always look at the glass like half full rather than half empty. So like it always helps to let them know it's a good thing to be optimistic. Yeah, but depending on the age, and as you say, every child is different. So you really have to, you have like your main ways that you kind of help to build that bond with the child. But then, depending on the child, you know how to approach. Say, for example, my little boy who has his own challenges with speech and stuff. I mean, I have different ways of positive reinforcement. You know, I will devote more time, come at his level to make sure that I understand exactly what he wants to portray. Because of course, when you don't listen to a child, you don't take time, and then they feel neglected, and then they can start acting out. So but then if I go to my middle child who feels like she's just in the middle, and sometimes there's more attention left and right, you know, so then I'm a little bit more sensitive. So you really have to know your kids, you really have to
Yeah,
know them, and then know how to approach, but have a balanced sense. You never make like one child feel like they are less than another one. So no matter what their different challenges are, you find a middle ground as a parent. It's challenging, of course, but you have to find one-on-one time with each of them and in different things that they like, and then try to teach them, even if it's a teaching experience. For example, I have two of my kids are also athletes, and when you're an athlete and you go through an injury, especially a serious one, that can really make you, that can get you down. So it's challenging for different things and different ages, but you have to approach it one on one. The basic thing I feel is just make sure you are actually uh being a good role model to them, and always make sure that they are heard. So I just always try to encourage them. I like positive reinforcement. I kind of like um comment on their strengths, and when they do something good, I'm like, yeah, you know, really try to encourage them. On the weaknesses, I'm not gonna like point out, but I'll try to find a way to tell them how, you know, we can do this, you know, but not in like a condescending way. Yeah, so it's really a balancing act. But as a parent, you have to be really clued into your kids and really know them, and you know, just do your best, you know, to try to approach them from a level that they really feel that they are also part of the question, you know, they are also part of the solution, you know. I hope I answered to a point where
yeah,
it's like,
yeah. It's
yeah,
extensive. So
yeah.
yeah, we would also hear from Reverend Israel.
Okay, yes. I think on a more general note, the generic word there should be love. Unconditional love, loving your child or loving your children in an equal manner. Yeah, and resisting the temptation, just like Mercy has said, resisting the temptation to love one child above another. Sometimes those factors could be there. Maybe a particular child of yours behaves, especially those who respect, who do whatever you ask them to do at that point in time. Whenever you call them, they're always there. Maybe you're in the kitchen, one will always ask you, "Mommy, what do you want? What do I do for you?" So there's temptation to like, have a preference for that child over the other. But it's good for us to set a paradigm, a model for the children by loving them sufficiently. And most importantly, not just by what we say with our mouths, but as couples, where there's love between the husband and the wife, the father and the mother, okay, unless in the case where it's a single mom, no problem. But they should reflect that love that they want to see in their child. Most times, our children are a reflection of who we are really. And also, sometimes the fear of parents is the fear of seeing their children replicating whom they were as child, in their reflecting or replicating their childhood. Most times you want to discipline them based on what you did as a child. So you're afraid, I don't want this child to end up this way, and most times become overwhelmed. So we should we should love our children, unconditionally. Then we should also let them, teach them how to cope, give them coping skill, you know, how to cope with life, how to cope with frustration. Let our children know that the graph of life is not always straight. Whether you are in America or in Nigeria or Zimbabwe or UK or Ukraine, challenges are ubiquitous. Challenges are everywhere. Nobody's above challenges. So we should train our children how to cope with difficulty, how to cope with challenges. So it's very, very important. And also, we should also teach our children to learn competence. you know they should find joy. You should find out the areas or the careers or what do you call it, things they love doing, and make sure they pursue competence in that area. Maybe it's writing, maybe it's singing, maybe it's playing football, maybe it's a lot of things now you can teach your children. It will make them to have a sense of what, especially if they're able to set goal and accomplish it. Maybe your child wants to learn how to speak French and is able to learn the basic, the rudiments. Is to him or to her is an accomplishment. So also we have to teach our children independence. They cannot totally rely on us forever. We should teach them how to think for themselves, even though we need to guide them with guidance. And they also teach them how to take responsibility for every of their decision and action. It's very important. These things, and also create, first and foremost, create an enabling environment, a peaceful environment, a serene environment that will nurture these children. So these are things. Then using positive, assertion, positive words on them, praising them when they do well. Do you understand? And when they do not do well, just tell them, "This thing you did, I didn't like it. This is your grade in school. I'm not impressed, but I know you can do better. Anyway, you try, but you can do very much better subsequently." So these are things, and avoiding personal attacks on the child by using abusive words on the child. It destroys that child. It doesn't make the child better. Then also avoiding in all this unhealthy comparison and competition. Look at your neighbor, look at our neighbor, look at her son, look at her son's XYZ. He's doing this, he's doing that. Look at what they are doing. But you are here. You can't make me proud. As a proud mother, you can't make me a proud mother or a proud father. At the end of the day, the child tries, it's not working. It makes the child to feel bad for his own failures. So I think these are things that will enable us build a self-esteem in the child. Primarily, self-esteem in a child has to do with the child recognizing, accepting himself, understanding his self-worth, and having an identity. And it is left for caregivers or parents to give the child an identity. That's the most important thing. So it starts with the home. A child that comes into the world, the primary place of socialization is in the family unit. So if the child cannot get the nurture and the training and the exposure and the sufficient love, because
Oh, did we just lose him?
Yeah, seems like.
I was just gonna ask. He just mentioned, Reverend Michael just mentioned about the environment which a child is brought in, as far as the child's self-esteem is concerned. And I was just something just dropped in my mind, and I was asking, when separations happens in marriages, it does affect the children in so many ways, and for them losing their self-esteem, for that matter, is also one of the things to look out for. In this situation, what advice would you give parents? It's a difficult thing. You're having to manage your emotions and also trying to maintain a certain persona for your child to deal with. Like, you don't want your child to lose themselves. How do you do that? How can they manage that? Do you have anything for the parents to think about?
Yeah, I don't, at least I can imagine. And for separation, I think it's a very difficult thing for kids to deal with. And as a parent yourself, you're only a human being, so you're also going through things that are not really okay at that point in time, depending on why the separation. But I feel like the advice I can give is to be true to yourself, because if you're not in a happy relationship, I think the kids actually sense it too, and that even affects them more. But if you've come to that point where you're in it, you just have to make sure you put the kids as a priority. Make sure that they still feel loved, make sure they still have the sense of security, and definitely make sure not to like badmouth like their dad or mom, depending on what the situation. Just try to be the best person that you can be. Like we said, the kids are always going to look at you as a role model. And if you are there sad and, whatever mood you have, that's how they're going to feel. So I just feel like we just have to have that personal integrity where you are truthful and honest to them. And I think kids are so resilient. So sometimes we feel like, oh no, they're not going to be able to cope. But when you give the kids the truth, then they will be able to live with that separation. They can still live with you and still go live with their dad and still have a good relationship. So we just have to really be honest, be truthful, and try the best, to be positive, because I feel like whenever you're positive, it always makes you to easily deal with your issues, because life is a constant battle. So yeah, that's what I would advise.
Thank you, Mercy. Reverend, when we lost you, we
Yeah, sorry.
were your the mentioning of a child's environment came to mind, and I just asked Mercy about parents who are dealing with divorce or separation, for that matter. How do they are they supposed to maintain a child's self-esteem when such things happen? What would you advise parents to do when they find themselves in these situations? The effects, we are all aware that these things affect kids in so many ways. What level of understanding does a parents need to have, and what can they equip themselves with to maintain a child's self-esteem when they are going through separation or when they are divorced? How do they do that? Any pointers?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that question. The challenge we have as as people is that most people have not really matured. Maturity is not just a function of age; it's a function of bringing your emotion under control. In the case of separation or divorce rather, um, parents or couples have their reason why they want to divorce. I'm not advising towards that, but if it is something that's inevitable, I think they should be objective about what they're about to do, and also the implication on the child, because the child, okay, is at the receiving end of every altercation between couples or between parents. So at most times you see, I don't know, maybe there in the advanced country, I think the devastation is not as much as it is here in Africa, where sometimes you see a man will have an issue with the wife and he asks the wife and the children to go and he don't even care and nobody asks him, nobody brings him to book or to call him to account, brings him to account. So I think we should also look at that child's self-development and that child's emotional well-being, because the child is first of all disappointed. The child will say maybe he's not worthy to have them as parents. That's why sometimes the child begin to blame himself because they don't love him or her much. That's why they can't stay together. So this is just the beginning of low self-esteem. And I think no parent should stop or hinder either of the parents from seeing the child. Like I said, I usually tell people, if, for example, a man has problem with a wife for whatever reason, maybe bordering on infidelity, incompatibility, or what have you, you should be objective. Talk to your partner why you feel the way you feel. If you have any evidence, bring them forth. Try to fight for your marriage. Try give it your best. Don't just chicken out, because it's out of low self-esteem that will make one to chicken out from a situation that could be remedied. Now, if at the end of the day it defies all possible solution, you should be objective. You should respect the privacy of that woman or the wife, or the privacy of the man. That it didn't work out between both of you doesn't mean that you demonize the person before your children or before outsiders, or begin to share the moments you had together, with the public. That is also a display of low self-esteem. So I think for example, a dad whose a child, separated from him and maybe from the mother, could decide to visit, maybe with permission of the mother or permission of the court or permission of whoever is a regulatory body or regulatory ombudsman, could decide to go to the school during the child's maybe inter-house sports or graduation or something. Just be there for the child. Meet the public place maybe with the mother too. Is very, very important. It will make that child to build that self-esteem and that identity, because fathers play a very vital role in the life of a child, especially the girl child. Everyone, both male and girl child. Most times, people who feel rejected and dejected, they are vulnerable. They become a tool in the hand of pedophiles, the hand of those who abuse children and what have you, because they are looking for acceptance. And children who are devastated, who are emotionally bankrupt, the nature abhors vacuum, so they will look for something to fill up that vacuum, like doing drugs, prostitution, armed robbery, gangsterism, and what have you, even violence, even gambling, as a way of. Let me tell you something. On the other side of the divide, there seems to be a love in quote for them. Why are you like this? Why are you worked up on yourself? Why are you upset? Take this crack, just take care, man. Don't worry, I'll give you, this some money. I'll give you $2,000, just you settle it. So their child feels, I'm loved here, this home. You understand that? So, but I call it a lateral love. It's not a love that is, it's a love on the other side, left-handed love. So it's good that we consider our child when you want to go for, when a couple wants to undergo divorce, and really rethinking whether it is really worth it, because one day you will leave this world and you leave a damaged child that probably will become probably a terrorist or whatever. Maybe not really in its literal term, but because hotter than. So most times you
Yeah,
see a child may be prone to.
it's
Yeah, thank you. Okay,
it's a tricky
I
one,
should
isn't
stop.
it?
Yes, yeah. It is. It's really dicey. It's really complex. But all I'm just saying in a nutshell is both parents should think it through and also make provision for their child. They should not be absent for their child. They should make sure they are there in one way or another, even if it's occasionally, and check on their children once in a while. It's very, very important, because those children are the fruits of the marriage. That you have issue with your couple, your spouse, doesn't mean you have issue with your child. No genuine, no mature husband or father or mother will reject a child in toto. They are product of love. You made love, you brought them in. So why would you allow them to just wander on their own? They didn't write you a letter. So it is your responsibility to make sure you care for the child, even if the marriage does not subsist. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend. Yeah, you've got into details in that aspect. Well, Nancy says, I don't know, can Mercy, can you read what Nancy just said there? I can't see it properly.
Okay, let me try. It's very, very small. It says one can never underestimate the role of fathers in a home.
Yeah, Nancy is hiding and is pointing questions to us. She has to report herself here and answer that question.
Question,
Nancy.
yeah.
So, yeah, the next question that we are going to is, uh, are there other things to consider when building a child's self-esteem? One of it is, you might be wanting to build a child's self-esteem in ways, but the child thinks differently. There are other things going on, that makes it difficult. So, as we said, we've discussed it before. One child might be different from the other. When you are trying to model things, they understand things differently. Does it always has to be this is the rule of the house and these are what we are following? Or do you have to consider other things? What are the other things that you need to consider when you are embarking on this journey with your child? I will start with Mercy again.
Okay. Well, I was just thinking about the question. So I really think it depends on the situation, and like I said before, on the child, but like also you as the parent, you really have to have a broad mind, an open mind, you know, to different ways how to get that child to understand, because for me at the end of the day it's just whatever you can do to make that child feel loved, feel grounded, and then to also be honest with them. At least they should have some sense of discipline. So like when we talk about like your personal integrity, they should have goals, and I mean their words should match, it should match their action. So they should be actually um living in the moment, making sure that they're trying to achieve that particular goal for themselves. So my role in this case will do everything I can, will be to do everything I can to make them uh be successful. So if it involves even another friend, or if it involves someone that they care about and they can also listen to, I will not I will not rule that out. So I will do everything possible as a mom, just to, because we say that it's I don't know, according, it's like an African thing that it takes a village to raise a child. So anything positive that I can put into the child's life, I will. Any positive addition, it be out of the house, a teacher or someone that they like, that they can listen to in cases where they're kind of maybe like resisting the approach. I will do that. At the end of the day, we just have to love them, listen to them, be firm with them, and then you hope that you put in the groundwork, and you just like it. Yeah, it's really something that never ends. So it's not really a destination, like Reverend said, because even for myself, I keep building myself up, then imagine a kid. So it's something that we do, and we just try to keep ourselves in check and make sure that we are putting in the right things and we are constantly learning. Yeah, I think that's how I'll end this question.
Amma Manson just wrote that you first have to consider the will of the child themselves. That's a tricky one. the will of the child, whether the child is willing to do something. Are they willing to go the way that you're trying to direct them? How do you deal with that? I think that's the most difficult one. I don't know. It looks like Reverend is frozen. So, what would you say?
Yeah, yes, I think that that's definitely true. And I think it still boils down to what we have been saying. Like you have to look at every child differently. Yeah, like for me, I've had this experience with my kids, and as they grow, I also grow with them. My first one at first will not take things a certain way, like so I have come to figure out how to really make them see certain things, and they have also taught me how to appreciate what they are saying. So definitely it depends on the will of the child, and that's why for one kid you're going to work a little bit differently and maybe a little bit harder than another one. But my secret is, or like what I have discovered too, is like when you kind of interact with them and come to their level, try to get at their level. What if they are actually trying to impress something on you? Try to look through their eyes or through their own lens and see where they are coming at. Then it's really much easier. But then you still know your role as the parent, and you have the bigger role here to see how you can adapt. But yeah, kids definitely they tend to flourish when you actually bring them up in a way that they can also make decisions for themselves, take responsibility, and then you try to follow through with them. Yeah, so definitely yes.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a very tricky one. It's a very tricky one. I must admit, as a parent, because you, the parent, you are better. You have to consider how equipped you are as well,
Yes,
in as far as what you have is what you were able to present to your child emotionally, mentally, even the environment where you
right.
live. It's a factor in that as well. Um, so the goals, the child has to understand the goals that you set for them. They have to understand so many things that you want to relate to them. So it's a tricky one. I think Reverend is back, but it's still frozen.
Yeah,
Mercy, can you please read what Nancy just posted? I can't see from my
He
side. They
said,
are too tiny.
one thing I have
okay.
discovered
Let him go
that is
ahead.
overlooked is that having responsibilities and chores are great self-esteem builders. Yes, it makes them confident in themselves that they can do things on their own. Yeah, I think that's also a point where we talk about self-independence. Yes, this very is very important. It's a very important aspect. Oftentimes, you see parents they do everything for their children. They don't ask them to do the dishes or clean or wash or what have you. They do everything for them. You're not helping your child. You're making a child to have a dependency syndrome. They depend on you their whole lives. Some of them don't know how to cook. And also in the family, there should be no gender roles. Everybody, gender is is for everybody, male and female. The men should learn how to cook. The women should learn how to iron. No gender role. Everybody should do all the work. It's very important. You know, to children. Don't say this one is for girls. Girls will go and cook. Boys will go and play football. No, don't do that. Don't train your children that way. Yeah, I think and that is correct. Yeah. They also said also allow them to take reasonable risk
Yeah,
and show them how to cope with failure. Yeah,
right.
that's the area parents fail. You always want your child to take first position in class, whereas you know that you yourself you didn't take first position in your class throughout your school time, so you start burdening the child, start gaslighting the child. It's not fair. It's unrealistic. It's unrealistic. So I think and just as Nancy, you're correct. I agree with you.
Yeah, that's a very pertinent point. And even if you took first, it doesn't mean that your child is going to mirror exactly what you did. So definitely
Yeah.
we have to let them take risk and build on their self-confidence. Yeah, they should be able to be responsible, take the blame in a healthy way when you have to take blame, but most importantly, build from it.
Okay, there's something else I want to say that's very important. Should I go ahead?
Sure.
Should I go ahead? Yeah, that thing is we should place enormous importance on building values and connections and relationship association with the right people. Building healthy relationships for our children, they are very, very important. Your value does not come from the car you have, whether you're driving a Lamborghini or Rolls Royce. Those things are good, but your value does not come from those things. Your value does not come from going schooling in Harvard. It's good to school in Harvard. If you have the opportunity, that's very great. But there are people who still school there and they feel worthless, you know. So your value comes from what God has put inside of you. Your value comes from knowing that God loves you and He has a plan for you. There's a vacuum in the heart of a man that a person that nothing can fill it in except God. So teaching your children to love God, to fear God. And most importantly, when we talk about self-esteem is not isolated in itself. When a child continues to make bad choices, wrong choices, he will begin to feel that guilt, that sense of rejection and remorse that could erode his confidence. So another thing again that helps to build self-confidence, self-esteem is being prepared, taking responsibility, just like Nancy has said. You must take responsibility, read your books, copy your notes, attend classes, don't skip classes. Because you remember that whenever you read and you study very well, you are confident in the class to write the exam. So when you don't do those things, what will happen? Depression will set in. When you take your money, like $2,000, $5,000, and you invest in a business that you know nothing about, or you gamble with those money, what will happen? You have depression because you have lost money. So making the right choices, just like I said, esteem is a journey and not a destination. So the choices you make every day determines your peace of mind. These are very important, you know, in whatever we do. Your value does not come from external sources. It's good to appreciate external sources, but your value comes from knowing who you are and whose kid you are. You're a child of God, for crying out loud.
Well, thank you very much, Reverend, for that point. We are pressed with time. Our time is up, but there are two questions that we need to cover before we go. The
Okay.
question is there a link between a child's self esteem and their emotional overload? We are dealing with people whose emotions are still developing. They are not, they are children for that matter. So there are so many things that goes on with them that we need to understand. Uh, what's how can you handle both? How do you deal with it? How do you balance this as a parent?
Well,
Okay, who goes
let
first?
me.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to make a point. Yeah, I feel that there's a correlation between like the self-esteem and then the emotional overload. So I believe like we have to. It's a mindset that you have to also impress on your kids, and you have to have them explain to them the difference between facts, interpretations, and emotions. So like you have to take the time to tell them, to always kind of reason or like to think, what are they feeling today? Do their actions reflect their feelings? So they need to take time, especially if you're faced like with a situation. Always try to calm down and then try to look for a solution. So the higher your self-esteem, the better it will be to deal with these emotions. I know sometimes emotions can maybe take the better of you, but like we said, this is a constant thing that they have to practice. For my kids, I try to do like sessions with them, trying to give them like positive lines to always start their day, thinking like, oh, this is an exercise that I just came up that we try to do. Like you say, you want to complete your day today. Like, I want to do everything with a sense of high self-esteem. Therefore, you complete the blank. And so in that way, they are always thinking like positively, and always kind of recalibrating themselves. So if you're feeling like low, okay, what is going on? How can you approach this? So always trying to monitor yourself and see where you're going, what are your goals, and how are you actually actively trying to make the situation better. So definitely there's a link. And when you assert yourself, like I said, that right, that it's your right to be here, and it's your right, to be correct. You have to have your belief system. You have to actually believe in it. I think that helps you a lot with how you cope with issues that arise.
Thank you, Reverend. What do you say about that?
Okay, yes,
You brought up the point of emotional overload.
Overload.
Can you explain what it is, and then
okay.
and then help us to see how you can? Is there a link, as Mercy has just explained? What is
Yeah,
your point
I
is about the link between them, and how do you help parents to deal with this?
yeah, I so much agree with my colleague, the last speaker. There is a direct link between self-esteem and emotional overload. First of all, what is an emotional overload? Emotional overload, in my own term, could be referred as um, a situation whereby a child or a person is overwhelmed by what he or she is being through, by challenges and circumstances, to the point that he or she is unable to really manage the situation properly. Where there's an outburst of emotion, the person is like crippled, or one's head is full, that you're not able to, the child is not able to know what to do. It's like a crippling effect. So low self-esteem has a way of crippling a child. Any child that has low self-esteem will always have an outburst of emotion, will always be full of rage, withdrawal, will be caustic, lacerating in his comments and his behavior, will have issues with his character or her character and behavior, and also will not be able to engender or foster a good, working, healthy relationship. So there's a direct link. He will not be able to manage himself or herself well, will not be able to set goals and achieve those goals, will not be able to cope, will not be able to, the child will see himself as what I call a hopeless complex, or as a failure, a child who has low self-esteem. And if it's become chronic, it's advisable for the parent or the caregiver to seek the help of a professional, maybe a psychiatric, a psychologist, or a counselor, to really look at that issue, and probably they prescribe a therapy, just like Mercy has said. Maybe have a way of creating a system, creating a practical, a kind of a practice, maybe saying some words, maybe breathing in, that was a book that helped me becoming a mental millionaire. It helped me in life. I don't know, I forgot the name of the person that wrote that book, Becoming a Mental Millionaire. Then there's another one by Dr. Is it Hujison, Your Inner Child of the Past. That book really helped me. So sometimes they say breathe in, hold one of your nose, nostril, and breathe in when you're feeling depressed, and breathe out from the other one. Do it like that 10 times, say certain words, look at the mirror, talk to yourself, I'm valuable. When I had that issue, I had to do this thing for almost 1 year, looking at the mirror. It was not easy, but at the end of the day, it worked. It made me to believe in myself. So any child, any person that has low self-esteem will always, be clouded by emotion. Will not be able to think through. Will not be able to make the right decision. The child will keep goofing and keep making mistakes and committing blunders. So whereas a child that has a high self-esteem will be able to, become objective in looking at issues, be able to analyze issues, analyze circumstances, and be able to come up with a solution, be able to set goals and achieve them. So for us to build that child self-esteem, I think it's good we let them know how to set up a goal. I mean, a goal and achieve that goal. Maybe I want to move from point A to point B. Then the child fulfills that, achieves that, is a success for that child. So emotional overload is something that we need to really, really work on, especially by taking care of our self-esteem. I don't want to
You're making
stretch
a
it
mess.
beyond that because of our time.
You're making a mess.
Okay.
Sit down.
Yeah.
Sit down.
Thank you, Reverend, for that.
Sit
So
down. Sit down.
it looks like you've answered a couple of questions about how to
Sit down.
maintain.
Sit down.
Yeah, sit down. My son is trying to interrupt me whilst I'm doing this.
It's well. They're part of the program. They're part of the program. We're here
Exactly.
for
Yeah,
them. I hope they are
exactly.
listening. Yeah.
Yeah.
And another again,
So
don't despise your child. Don't despise your child, believing that they don't know what they don't understand what is happening. Right from age one, they understand what is happening. Only that they are not able to make meaning
yeah,
out of it. But over time, they will to explain that. So let them be part of it.
yeah. He's been here trying to engage me whilst I'm doing this. And one thing about emotional overload and all that, in our society, one thing that I identified is when a child is smacked or is whether the child has done something, and some parents hit their children and their children are crying and they are like, keep quiet, don't cry. You've sent the child into an emotional state and then you want to shut it down immediately. How does that work?
It's typical.
It adds up to the overload. It
Typical of
adds up.
Africans.
The child is sad, is heartbroken. You
It's
have
typical
to
of
bring the
Africans.
child out slowly, but sometimes they expect the child to shut
Quiet.
down, and
Yeah.
and the child, it piles up, it causes up to some kind of
I
overload. You
think
hit the child, it hurts,
I
and allow the
yeah.
child to cry.
I think it's genetic. We inherited from our foreparents. When they beat you, they say, "Keep quiet, don't say a word, keep quiet," and you want to try to bottle it up. So I think we need to work on that. I'm also guilty of that too. Anyway,
Yeah,
and
it
oftentimes
builds up the
we take it
emotion.
personally. We take it personally. We think they are disturbing our personal space. They are,
Yeah,
making us uncomfortable. So we don't not about the child, about us now. So we're learning.
yeah.
Come,
Yeah, so that's we send them into that overload without realizing it. The names
yeah,
you call the child
Yes.
should be positive ones, whether they've done
yeah.
wrong or right. You should find the right way to reward them when they do right. It's all the speech and everything. You should be very conscious, I think. It looks like when you're dealing with a child and building their self esteem, you should be intentional. You should be intentional in your words, in your attitude, and everything, because they pick all that thing up as well. So, how do you maintain a child who's recovering? Some children have been through this emotional thing, they are not good with their self esteem. You are trying to build this thing, this self esteem back. How do you do it, and how do you maintain recovery? Some children have been hurt in the past, so they've already gone there. They are not happy in themselves. How do you help them to recover from these emotional low self-esteem?
Well, as I said before, I'm really not an expert in this field, but I just from my experience, I just feel like everything, like there's always a second chance, you know, there's always a chance for you to get back to where you were from before, or to get back to the new you. And in this case with kids, kids always flourish with a lot of love. You have to love them, you have to accept them, you have to try to be in their shoes, even though it's not easy. Like if you can have a child that's depressed and you're just wondering, but why is this child, like, I'm doing everything, but what's going on? So you really have to get into their head, like, really, don't do it forcefully, but let them be vulnerable with you and really try to examine and see what are the triggers, and then try to find out even from them, like, what would make them feel better. So I think it's really one-on-one basis, but as a parent, I feel like love conquers all. So far as you get to with this child and really make them feel like they matter, let them know that their life is very important, not just for you as a parent, but for themselves. They are not living like to um just to make you proud, but because they are a person on their own. So when you relate with that child in that way, they will really, you will be surprised at what can happen. So I think for me, I'll end by saying, like, love conquers all. Nurture that child, talk to them at their level, and even if you don't have all the resources, also seek help from other people who have been in such situations. So you'll be really surprised. I think our kids are very resilient. They can come back from anything just like us. So yeah, I trust in that, and I also always trust in God that God will help them to overcome, yeah, whatever.
Thank you, Sister Mercy. Reverend, any final words with regards to helping the child to recover? Is he frozen?
Oh yeah.
I don't want him to come back and realize that we are gone.
We are gone, right?
That would not be fair
Fair
to
at all.
him. So if anyone on here have some questions, we have about 10 minutes to go. Bessie, do you have 10 minutes? Maybe
5.
7:30?
Yeah,
So
I have about 5, then I'll be on my way.
okay. So we are just waiting if anyone has a question regarding this so that we answer it quickly, then we leave. Reverend, are you still frozen? He still looks
I'm here.
frozen.
Yeah,
I'm
he's
If
here.
back.
any
Please go ahead, Reverend.
Okay. Hello. Can you
Yes,
hear
hello.
me? Can you hear me?
Yeah,
yes.
your final
Yeah.
words as to
Okay.
recovery
Yeah.
from,
Yes.
yeah.
It's okay. I'm an example of a man God has helped. Like I said, let us not overlook the power of prayers. Prayers permeates the soul, the spirit, and the body. We talk about the soul. The soul has to do with your emotion and your will. So I think most times our children take on our nature. It's genetic sometimes. Most of times, most things, most often than what you see them express are things that we already had as children, even presently as an adult. So we should commit them into God's hands and ask God to help us. And also, for that child, that particular child, we should be intentional. We should be observant. Look at your child,
Perfect.
observe differences, improvement or deterioration. You'll be able to know how to provide solution. Call the child, speak to the child, maybe take the child for a walk or for a vacation or whatever it is. Tell the child how you love the child. Just get one or two small, no matter, an inexpensive gift. Talk to the child. You can be a great person as a superpower. Sometimes they reluctant say, are you not a human being? Are you a robot or an alien or something like that? Just to make them do that thing. So talk to that child, reassure the child. You know, these things are very important to build the child's self-esteem. And in the situation where it is chronic and something that you can't handle yourself, it's always advisable to seek the help of a psychologist, a neurologist or what have you, to really help you and to map out a recovery plan for that child. So reassure the child, speak positive words into the life of the child, bring the child closer, and be friends without your child. Just like Mercy said, let your child be vulnerable before you and tell you why or how he's feeling. this way or that way, you'll be able to like tell the child, oh, I didn't mean to do this or that to you. It was just, I was just trying to correct you. Sometimes our I'm from the Igbo extraction in Nigeria. I'm from the Igbo tribe. There's an adage in our tribe that will say, if you flog a child with the right hand, use the left hand and bring your child back and say, okay, it was not all about you. I was just correcting your misdemeanor. So, but I still love you. And as a parent, let us not fail to apologize to our children. If you know you did something that really hurts your child beyond the discipline, you can call the child, I'm really sorry I did that. You are not just condescending, you are showing, giving the child a role model, you're being a role model. Also telling the child, because learning how to say I'm sorry, thank you, I love you, excuse me, sorry, all those things is from the home. So they learn it from you. So sometimes you say, apologize for this, that. Okay, I'll make it up to you. I'll give you this for this. I'll give you those. All those things will help. So also look at the progress for all the plans you have listed. Look at the child's progress. Be able to evaluate the child's progress and know whether the child is doing well or not. And if his child is not doing well, you can have a recap of what you did earlier and to see that the child bounces back. Most importantly, love that child and reassure the child. I think it's very important. I can't hear you.
Sorry, I turned the mic off because my yeah, thank you so much for staying up to this time, Mercy. I knew you were pressed for time. And Reverend, thank you all for coming. Thank you for
Thank
your
you.
insights and the knowledge that you shared. I hope that parents found this very useful. And I will encourage you all to practice this. It's not easy. It's a step by step thing, daily thing. You need to be conscious about it. As Reverend said, you need to be objective about it as to what you want to attain for your child. And, it shows in how we respond to things, how we relate to each other. This self esteem thing is very, very, very important. See it as one of the important tools or skills that you want to impact to your child and use it. Read more about it. Find out ways to help your child with this, and you'll be happy about the results. Maybe you might not see it now, but later in life, you will see that it's been helpful to you. So thank you, Mercy, and thank you, Reverend Israel, for coming. We missed Nancy so much
Yeah.
and Cheesy, but maybe next time they will be available. Thank you all
Yes.
for a beautiful evening. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you
Thank you
for
so
having
Enjoy
much.
me.
your week.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was a
Bye.
wonderful